Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend John Opalewski. How are you today, John?
Jim, I'm good. My day has gotten
Right on.
better because I've been hanging out with you,
Right
recording,
on.
and it always is so much fun to be together and appreciate our friendship and that we get to do this together.
Yeah.
We get to talk and share and help some leaders along the way.
Right on. Right on. Yeah. It's funny that we're already looking at. I mean, here we are in 2023.
Yeah,
That happened fast.
yeah,
Are you like me? Did you lose 2 years during COVID? People like say, well, yesterday. I was like, oh, it wasn't yesterday. That was 2 years ago.
yeah. Just unbelievable how fast
I
it's
it's
been.
gone fast, but I'll also say this. I think the learning curve has been sharper since 2020
Yeah.
than any other season in my lifetime. We've had to. It's been adapt or die, adjust, pivot, all those words that
Mhm.
we use. So I'm excited today because we're going to hear from you the key lessons that you learned in this last year. You want to tell us anything about that before you get started?
Yeah, I just to set it up at the end, near the end of every year, I take time, Jim, to reflect on and I don't know if this is the preacher in me or what, the three most significant lessons of the year. Maybe that's all I can really
Yeah.
grab, get my arms around in any given year. And I guess the reason I do that is because I don't want to have to learn these same three things next year.
Right.
I,
Right.
I want to internalize them, carry them into next year.
Yeah.
And so today, uh, I would like, if you guys would allow me, I would like to
Yeah.
share the three most important things that I learned in 2023, and let's just, or excuse me, in 2022, and let's
Right.
just rap about that.
Right on. Yeah, and I think this is maybe my second or maybe even my third one of these through the
Yeah,
years that we've been doing this. And one of the things I love about this episode, John, is when you talk, you give me language for. Sometimes I see it, I feel it, but I don't have language for it. And when you identify it, it helps me then to help other people with that. So I'm thrilled to hear. So take away what is number one?
here's the first one, and that is growth forces change.
Boom.
Growth forces change. 2022 was a year of record growth
Yeah.
for our organization, Jim. The number of leaders, and this is the grace of God, this is the gift of God to us. The number of leaders we helped in 2022 quadrupled compared to 2021. Jim, we helped over
Wow.
2,400 leaders.
Wow.
By the grace of God, we were able to directly influence. It's just staggering. It's amazing. We're so happy
Yeah.
about that. But as our company grew, just a little backdrop, the previous 9 years there was incremental growth, and
Yeah.
I had this suspicion that I needed to change how I was leading. I think the
Yeah.
team had more than suspicion. They knew that I needed to change how I lead and what I focused on and where my energy went. But the dramatic growth in 2022 forced the issue. And for
Oh,
me, Jim, it's either change or drown.
yeah.
And I wonder how many leaders know somewhere in their mind and heart they need to adjust the way they're leading, but they haven't had the catalyst of significant growth or significant decline maybe could also be
Right.
that catalyst to force the issue. But for me, it was like, man, we've had this amazing year, but I have had to change more in terms of what I work on, what I don't work on, what I say yes to, what I say no to. I've had to
Yeah.
change more in 2022 than any year previously as it relates to our ministry, Converge Coaching. So growth forces change.
Yeah.
I wonder what you think about that one.
Well, I think we've heard the line before. You worked really hard for 9 years to become an overnight success. Yeah, there's that moment of critical mass,
Yeah.
and I think that's a pivotal moment. If you are not, as the leader of Converge Coaching, prepared to change, then it isn't that number. It's what it was in 2021 because you had to say no to hundreds of people. And instead you figured out a way to multiply, to delegate, to expound. And now here we are. I mean, I don't mean to be a prophet here, but 2023 isn't looking like it's going downhill. It's gonna multiply again. And again, what you do to help people has to change. So the local pastor of a church of 100 people that goes from 50 to 100 or 100 to 50, what that job description may have been last year, it is not this year. There's a
Right.
significant change. There's a shift in the dynamic. There's a shift in the leadership dynamic that
That's
must
right.
go with it. And yeah, and that's a learning curve, right? And that's
It
isn't
really
that isn't
is.
that nice that you know people that are in this, and if there was a pastor saying I grew from 50 to 100 or constricted from 100 to 50, you would know 10 people probably that would have a meaningful conversation with that person, to help them make those adjustments.
Yes.
That's part of change. Yeah.
Right. And so Rob Ketterling, I think a lot of our listeners or watchers know who Rob is. He
Yeah.
wrote a book called Change Before You Have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think for me, Jim, I was a little bit behind the curve. I knew in the back of my mind, John, you
Yeah.
have to shift, you have to shift, you have to shift. But
Yeah.
this amazing wave that hit us in 2022 has forced the issue. I have no choice.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
either do it or, something bad could happen to me. So
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
making the decision to make the
Yeah.
adjustments and to change how I lead.
Right on.
Here's the second one. The second lesson. And again, maybe none of these are going to be like, oh wow, man, I've never heard anything like that before. But for me, it was just like whammo. And here's the
Yeah.
second one. Joy and pain often travel alongside each other.
Hmm.
Joy and pain often travel alongside each other. As we just got done talking about that 2022 was a banner year for the
Yeah.
ministry, and we're very happy about that. We've added to the team. We've added more responsibility to the existing team,
Yeah.
and I'm ecstatic about that. Um, Instead of 3 granddaughters, now I have 4. So
Grew by 25%.
yes, my granddaughter. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But right alongside all of that joy, we experienced significant loss
Mhm.
in 2022.
Yeah. Sure.
I'm not going to outline all of it.
Yeah.
There were several big ones, and then some smaller ones. But
Yeah.
one that you're aware of, Jim, Laura and I lost one of our 2 best friends in
Yeah.
2022 to cancer.
Yeah.
And she had been a dear friend of Laura and mine for 40 years.
Yeah.
And there's no way for me to adequately describe a sense of loss and grief and pain over
Yeah.
her passing. She was dependable, she was safe, she was wise, she was consistent, she was hilarious,
Yeah.
and we miss her so
Yeah.
much. And so right beside the many joys of 2022, pain exists right along with it. I
Yeah.
wonder what you think about this second one, Jim.
Yeah. I. It's funny. I don't want to set up the dynamic, or if I'm happy, I should be careful because sadness is right around the corner.
And that's not what I mean.
And I know that. That's what I'm saying. Like it isn't like a yin and a yang, a balancing of the force and Star Wars. But the reality is we live in a fallen world. That my mom used to say something that really helped me. She said, "This isn't heaven, and this
Yes.
isn't hell. This is the place in between. And there's a lot of heaven floating around. There's a lot of hell floating around, and it's all competing for our heart. Who will we trust? Who will we believe? In the sorrow, in the joy. And I just think, I heard a comedian say it years ago. He was talking about how, life is a series of ups and downs, and Jesus promised to give us life more abundant. The highs are going to be higher, but the lows are going to be lower. I mean, the highs of, like you're saying, a relationship of a deep, loving, Christ-centered friendship between couples is one of the greatest gifts in life. And now not only is the sweet woman gone, but her grieving husband is
Yes.
now in your life as well. And that thought that, how do I have joy in the midst of such sorrow?
Is it
I
right? Is it right to have joy
Yeah,
even in the midst of sorrow? There's a question I think may be present
yeah.
in some folks' minds.
But
Is it
but if
okay?
but if we could resurrect her from the dead and say, would you rather I was sad or happy? We all know what the answer would be. Do you want me to die with you, or do you want me to wait and continue my life? We know what the answer would be.
Yeah.
I don't know anybody that fits that category that doesn't want us to go hug our grandbabies, and they're irreplaceable. So it isn't like I'm going to go find another friend. It isn't
Right.
that, but it's the when my dad died, my mom, I was concerned that she wasn't grieving because she didn't experience the profound sadness that I would expect after 50 years of marriage. So
Yeah.
I pushed her a little. Are you really okay? Oh yeah, I'm so grateful for this. But how do you feel? Yeah, but I'm so grateful because and about the fourth time I pushed her on grief, and she came back with gratitude. I said, "Are you telling me that the way you're dealing with grief right now is not by mourning what you've lost, but being grateful for all that you've had?" And she said, "Yes, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying my husband isn't dead and I don't miss him terribly. I'm saying I'm grateful for 50 years of a man who loved Jesus and loved me." And I think so that's what we're talking about, the joy of gratitude, but it doesn't ignore loss and it doesn't negate loss. It
Right.
joins it. It joins it. I'm grateful for what I've had that very few people have enjoyed, a lifelong friendship between couples.
Sure.
But that also makes the sadness as real.
Yeah. I'm wondering if we need to get comfortable, Jim, with this idea
Yeah, sure.
that it's possible, and it's maybe more than possible, maybe it's likely to experience two divergent emotions simultaneously.
Yeah.
With this thought that life is never all good nor
Right.
all bad. Maybe life is good and bad traveling along together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think at our dear friend's memorial, we saw that played out.
Yeah.
There was laughter and joy, and then there was sorrow and tears, and
Right.
then more laughter and joy, and then
Yeah.
sorrow and tears. And
Moments apart, right?
that's right.
One sentence and the next sentence. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I guess really where I'm driving at with this one, Jim, is I think sometimes, especially when I was younger, I used to have such black and white thinking
Yeah.
that if my life is good, it all has to be good, or it's not good.
Mm.
Right. And
Yeah.
that's youth, right? That's
Yeah.
foolishness. And what came home to me in 2022 once again was I can be having amazingly good things happening in my life and amazingly painful things happening at the very same time. And I have to be okay with that. I don't have to like it necessarily. I have to be
Yeah.
okay with that and accept the fact that many times that's how life works. That's how the
Yeah.
world works. So that's the
Yeah.
second one. Let me give you the
Yeah.
third one, unless you had something else you wanted to say about
I
that
just think
second
what
one.
Jesus said, yeah, that in this world you will have tribulation, but take heart.
Mhm.
I've overcome the world. So which
There
one's
you go.
true? The answer is both.
They're both
They're
true.
both true. Yeah.
Mm. So let me give you the last one, the third one.
Yeah.
And this one I think again, this might not be a big deal for anybody listening. I hope it is. But for me it was huge.
Yeah.
And that is this: the world is big enough for all of us to succeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna say something that I hate to admit,
Mm.
but I'm gonna admit it anyway. Early in Converge Coaching's existence, I'd say the first couple of years, Jim, I struggled when other organizations that do what Converge Coaching does were experiencing smashing success.
Right.
It was this gnawing feeling, it was this misguided feeling that if they succeeded, we couldn't.
Right.
And I think the roots of that were fear and a scarcity mentality.
Yeah.
This idea of if they're succeeding, how can I? How can
Right.
we, and it's this misguided belief that there's not enough good things in the world to go around.
Right.
Can you relate to that at all, or am I just
Oh
an
yeah.
oddball there?
Oh yeah. No, no. I pastor a local congregation in a town of 12,000 people. Um, when you're the growing church and everybody's coming to your church from other churches, you feel pretty good about it. When a new church comes to town, when we had a Kmart and then Target went in and Kmart lost business, if that makes sense. And then
Yeah,
Walmart came in and Target and Kmart lost business. And then Kmart went out of business. And then that that's a terrible way to serve people. And
yeah,
that's a terrible injustice to yourself. That's business. That's entrepreneurship. That's capitalism. But what we do is not capitalism. It's
right.
kingdom. So the
Yeah,
kingdom has a generous king, and so we can be generous because we have a generous king. It's one is a strategy to defeat your competitors, and
right,
one is gratitude, I guess, for the ability to be called upon to play the game at any level is a real
right,
honor. And you and I have seen this too, right? The church that's generous, the family that's generous, the organization that's generous always prospers above those which are not. That's
correct.
just the principle of the kingdom. You want to be blessed? Be a blessing.
Yeah.
That's
And I
the way it
think that
works.
and I think that generosity is there's a lot of layers to that, right? But one of the layers
Yeah.
is just in the way we think toward
Yes. Yeah.
other people who are having a good run. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I've heard more than a few leaders tell me the reason they weren't making progress was, that big church down the road.
Yeah.
Because that big church is bearing fruit we can't.
Yeah.
And we believe that nothing could be further from the truth.
Right.
You know,
Right.
so so here's what God has taught me about this one in 2022, that the world is big enough for all of us to succeed. There are more opportunities that exist than people poised to take advantage of those opportunities.
Right.
I want you to think about that one for a minute with me, Jim. There are more
Yeah.
opportunities out there than people poised to take advantage of those opportunities.
Yes.
And the achievements of others don't diminish your achievements. Their
Yeah.
success is not a threat to you. You said it
Yeah.
earlier. We're talking kingdom, right?
Yeah.
This isn't a dog eat dog. No, we're talking about building the kingdom. So practice being happy when good things happen to other people,
Yeah.
and then get back to work. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Even humble yourself and say to those that are achieving goals that you have in your own heart and ask them, how'd you do it? Let me buy you a cup of coffee. Let
yeah,
me ask you how you reached the last 10 families you've reached. What can I learn from you? Instead
so
of
good.
criticizing, there can be a partnership. Instead of competition, there can be a compliment, that
100%.
can take place where we compliment one another.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so these are like the three things, Jim, as I got to the end of 2022 that were over and over resonating in my mind and in my heart,
Yeah.
that growth forces change, that joy and pain often travel alongside each other, and they
Yeah.
can coexist, and that the world contains more opportunities than we imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and so I wanted to lay that out there. I would love to challenge our watchers and listeners to think about what the most important things were that you learned
Yeah.
in 2022. Take a moment,
It's good.
piece of paper, go somewhere and think for an hour. Let those things that God taught you sink deeply into your mind and into your heart, and carry them forward into this new year.
Yeah.
I think I've talked to enough leaders to know that they don't want to take another lap around the same mountains again. I believe that.
No.
They want what they learned in 2022 to propel them into this year.
Yeah.
And and so that's what we want for all of our listeners, right, Jim? We want them to,
Yeah.
and what did God teach me? What did I take away? And how do I allow that to be just become a dealt with, settled issue
Yeah.
in my life that I don't have to
Yeah.
revisit all the time? So that's our heart. That's my heart behind
I love it.
this episode today.
I love it, John. And it's funny, as you said that, it happened again this year. When you talk, it's like, yep, I didn't have the words for that, but my heart understands what you're saying. And that desire is it, there's a Jewish calendar. We were on the Gregorian calendar, but the Jewish calendar where they sweep all the yeast out of their home. You know what I'm talking? Is that Rosh Hashanah, one of those Jewish
I'm not
holidays?
sure.
Yeah, but the thought of it is nothing, no leaven from last year is allowed to come into this year. There's that sense of new beginning that God is giving us a new beginning. We're going to take it. We're not taking emotional baggage from one year, unforgiveness from one year, sins from one year into the next. But this is different. This is the good stuff you got out of the year. This isn't yeast and sin, and there's no need for animal sacrifice to get over this. This is, what did I learn? And to take that and say, these are the possessions I will take with me into the next year. So thank you for sharing your heart with that. As you did your list, can I just, maybe for our listeners, that you just encourage them to do that? What does that look like? Was that you and your wife talking about what did we learn? Was that you in prayer? You and a dry erase board? Did you kind of collect these? Did it take 10 minutes? Just give us a framework of what was your process to come up with your three?
So I didn't, I collected these as the year unfolded.
Gotcha.
Let me start there.
Yeah.
And I have a little journal, and as this pushes up into my mind and I can't let it go, it's one of those, like, I know, God, you're teaching me something big here. I just jot it down in my journal. And so sometimes I think what it is, Jim, it's not that I'm spending a lot of time praying about these three things. You're like, God, what were the big three? It's almost like as the year unfolds, it's like I get this sense, boy, this is important.
Right.
This is a big deal. This one's going into the top three. So I collect it as the year unfolds, and by the time we get to toward the end of the year, I not only do I have a good sense of what those three things are, but I've got a good sense at a deeper level what they mean, and how they shape my behavior, my thinking, my interaction. So there are dozens of different ways you can do this. I love the idea of sitting with your spouse, and saying, "Hey, what were the real big things this year that God taught us?" I think that's an amazing idea. I love it, Jim.
Yeah, that's an excuse to get some curly fries at Arby's with some horsey sauce and just sit there for an hour. Yeah, I like that. I like that. All right, well, John, thank you for this. And if people, want to talk about this or other things with you or one of the staff at Converge, how would they go about doing that?
Very simple. Go to convergecoach.com, select the contact us link. That opens up a little form. It asks you for your email address and the reason why you'd like to speak to one of our coaches or mentors or consultants. And we're happy to give you a half hour of our time with no obligation from you. We just want to hear what's going on with you. We want to cheer you on. If you've got good things to share, we'd love to do that too. But if you're in a spot and you need a third party to unpack some things with, we're here to do that. And then if we can help you, we can talk about what that looks like down the road, or maybe we know somebody who's really even better suited to help you. And we refer, Jim, we refer prospective clients to other organizations who just do what they need better than we do.
Yes, we do. Yeah, because the goal is helping people. Like, the goal is getting it to those goals that God's placed in your heart. So, John, thank you for your time, and thank you, our listeners and watchers. It's been a pleasure. Happy New Year. Maybe one of your resolutions for this year should be to spend that half hour and talk a little bit with someone that might have a different perspective, or confirm yours, or maybe teach you some things you haven't quite learned yet. And if you're watching, you can tell there's a few gray hairs just on the screen alone. And I'm not going to get into anybody else on the team because it's not my place, but those are all earned. Those are all lessons. And one of the great things about learning something is having it to teach to somebody else, to share with somebody else. So if Converge can help you, we are here for that. So God bless you. You made it to a new year. 2022 is in the books. Congratulations. Continue to do your thing as God gives you the grace to do your thing as you continue to lead from alignment.